Bienvenido a tu espacio.
Transmito desde el lugar de la Matrix, de cuyo nombre no quiero acordarme.
Roswell, Nuevo México.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago. The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucers. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like. In Fort Worth, Texas, where the object was first sent, Brigadier General Roger Ramey says that it is being shipped by air to the AAF Research Center at Wright Field, Ohio. A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box kite. He says that it was so battered that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil. Other Army officials say that further information indicates that the object had a diameter of about 20 to 25 feet, and that nothing in the apparent construction indicated any capacity for speed, and that there was no evidence of a power plant. The disc also appeared too flimsy to carry a man. Now, back to Taylor Grant in New York. There was important activity within the UN Security Council today.
En Alemania vuela el primer dirigido.
2. Juli 1900, Jungfernflug des ersten Zeppelin-Luftschiffes in Deutschland und Beginn einer Entwicklung, die mit großem finanziellen Aufwand und zahlreichen Unglücksfällen das Luftschiff schließlich zur Serienreife brachte. Zeppeline, nach ihrem Erfinder Ferdinand Graf von Zeppelin benannt, wurden sowohl in der zivilen Luftfahrt als auch für militärische Zwecke eingesetzt. Sie beförderten Passagiere, stellten Entfernungsrekorde auf und wurden bei Expeditionen genutzt. Im Ersten Weltkrieg.
El presidente de Estados Unidos, Lyndon Johnson, firma un decreto que termina con el apartheid en su país.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago. The Negro won his freedom then. He wins his dignity now. 5 hours after the House passes the measure, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is signed at the White House by President Johnson. Before an audience of legislators and civil rights leaders who had labored long and hard for passage of the bill,
Steve Fossett es el primero que logra circunvalar el mundo en solitario sin escalas en globo aerostático. 2 de julio 2002.
En el año 1668, Thomas Savery consigue la patente de la máquina de vapor, en la cual usaba carbón para desarrollar esa potencia.
Le jour où on a eu ces machines, on a pu remettre. Comment fonctionne cette machine? C'est une machine atmosphérique. Vous voyez ici, il y a deux ballons. On a une 23 voies. Une 23 voies qui a été inventée par Papin. Bon, il n'y avait pas bien longtemps avant. Hein. On a une soupape de sûreté également inventée par Papin, qui va limiter la pression à l'intérieur de la chaudière. Ça, c'est la vidange de la chaudière. Et ça, c'est la vidange, c'est le réchauffeur de vapeur, d'eau. Éliminer les gaz du foyer. On va avoir aussi besoin d'oxygène pur pour avoir une bonne carburation du charbon. Et le danger le plus important, c'est le grisou. Le grisou, c'est un mélange de méthane et de poussière de charbon qui est excessivement inflammable. Alors, imaginons que l'ouvrier, le chauffeur, ouvre le foyer, il y a le grisou arrive, au contact de la flamme, c'est l'explosion assurée.
Ms. Rand, could you define for us the word monopoly in the way that you've used it?
Monopoly, in the strict sense of the word, means exclusive privilege to act in a certain capacity or to deal with a certain product. In the strict sense of the word, every one of us holds a monopoly on his own work. But this is not the sense in which it is used in politics and economics. Monopoly is usually taken to mean a coercive monopoly, which means the exclusive right to a certain field of activity from which all competitors and all future entrants are barred. Now, no private enterprise, no free market can establish a coercive monopoly because it is precisely the freedom of the market that would break it up. In the 19th century, attempts were made to corner the market in various commodities, and invariably they ended with the failure and the bankruptcy of the man who had attempted to establish a private monopoly. A coercive monopoly can be established only by law, that is, by means of a special government privilege granted to one producer or one company and barring all others from that particular activity. For instance, the public utilities are a classic example of a coercive monopoly, in the sense that no competitor can enter that field. He is forbidden to do so by law. That is a coercive monopoly. And all the evils popularly associated with monopolies are, of course, due to the activities of coercive monopolies of that kind. But if you look into their history, both here and in Europe, you will find that there has never been a coercive monopoly, that is, a monopoly which closes the field to competitors, that had been created by collusion or conspiracy of free enterprises on the free market. It has always been created by an act of government.
Ms. Rand, if coercive monopolies are created by acts of government, how do you interpret the fact that government then turns around and passes anti-monopoly laws? What are these laws directed against, since the government is the thing that's creating the coercive monopoly?
It is directed against the ablest and the most successful members of industry. You're speaking, of course, of the antitrust laws. The antitrust laws are the instrument of government control and coercion over all business. They are, as every lawyer knows, a mixed, undefined, undefinable mess of contradictions, which is in such a state that every businessman in the country can be prosecuted as a criminal at any moment at the discretion of the government, because he breaks some law or another the moment he goes into business. Laws which are contradictory, so that if he complies with one law, he simultaneously breaks another. What the antitrust laws have done is to grant the government an arbitrary power to crack down on any industrialist, and you have certainly seen the last two administrations today using that power not for purposes of protecting competition, which is a contradiction in terms, but for purposes of coercion and compulsion on general control of business politically, quite unrelated to the issue of competition. I want to stress that a competition, a free competition enforced by law, is certainly a contradiction in terms. The only protection of competition is a free market without any controls whatever. When government controls enter, they work to the advantage, again, of any enterpriser or industrialist with government pull. Any man who cannot make it on the free market or who cannot compete on merit runs to the government and invokes the antitrust law against his abler and more successful competitors. So that the net result of the antitrust laws has been only the protection of mediocrity and the destruction of ability and success.
Genius! I love it! Give this man a Nobel Prize!
El verdadero inventor de la radio. Se trata de Nikola Tesla y no del italiano Marconi, aunque este último se llevó el premio Nobel por usar un oscilador de Tesla para emitir señales a través del océano. Pero en el año 1943 la Corte Suprema de Estados Unidos devolvió la patente a Tesla.
Subscribe, comenta, ¿qué piensas? Hazlo, pero con amor.